Good day and well met, young alkalites, young knights, and aspiring questing wizards. It is I, Rob from Rob's Game Group, and I am here again this week with more information for you. I am going to tell you which fantasy RPG is right for you. But before we get to that, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. And if you do so, click that little bell icon so that you know when I put up new videos. And above all, hit a like button. It is what lets our videos get out to the masses easier. So, let us discuss which RPG, fantasy-wise, is right for you and your group. How should I know? I mean, that's like art. It's very subjective. There's no way for me to tell you exactly which RPG is right for you and your group, and there's so many fantasy RPGs out there to choose from that it would be nigh impossible for me to do a video and cover all of them. And there are some that I have never played, never heard of, so I would not even attempt to try to cover them. However, what I can do is I can take some that I think are good and popular, and there's a reason for the popular thing. I'll get into that in a minute. But I can take some, for this video I'll use 4, and discuss some talking points on each one, and hopefully that helps you decide if one of these is right for you, or by looking at these talking points that I'm going to use on each one, if some other fantasy RPG out there is right for you. That's all one can really do. I can't tell you which one is right for you. I don't know your mind or the likes and dislikes of you and your party. So I will do my best to give you a broad overview of some, and then you can take that information with you on your quest. Let's see, there is a multitude of fantasy RPGs out there. Like I said, there's no way that I could cover them all, but the one that we're going to start with is obviously the most popular and the granddaddy of them all, and that would be Dungeons and Dragons. Now, when I say popularity, there are kind of 3 points that I want to hit on each of these that I'm talking about. Popularity / accessibility, entry price point, and how well is the game supported. So, for Dungeons and Dragons, for example, it's a well-known name. And when I'm talking about popularity and accessibility, I'm talking about the ability to find people to play with. Now, you can like D&D or not like D&D for various reasons, or maybe you don't like this particular edition of D&D for particular reasons. That is beyond the point. The point is D&D is now, and has been for quite some time, a household name, and it is easy to find players for D&D. One has only to go as far as your phone and look on the internet. There are apps like Game4 and plenty of meetup group pages that you can go to. You can go to your local gaming store, and there's generally flyers, or maybe they have a message board on their game store's page for people to meet up for games. There are lots of ways to do this, and because D&D, quite frankly, outsells them all, and that was not always the case. They got their teeth kicked in during 4th edition, but with 5th edition, they've really come back. They have a very solid fan base, and it's not hard to find players or maybe a GM or DM for this game. So, specifically looking at 5th edition here because it is the most current version of the game and it is the most popular. It's the one that's played the most everywhere. So it is the most accessible. So yeah, it gets good points for that. I'm not really doing a rating system because I'm not trying to I'm not this is not a this game versus that game. I'm just looking at the different talking points on each game. So yeah, D&D is very accessible, very popular. So that is something you want to keep in mind. If you are new to gaming or maybe you're new to town and you are looking for a group, when you go into a game store, when we used to play in game stores, but when you go into a game store and you see there are 4 or 5 tables of people playing D&D, you know that you're not going to have a hard time finding people to play this game with. And that is important, whether it's board games, miniature games, role-playing games, whatever it is you're into. If you like, look at miniature games, if you like War Machine, but you move to an area where it is not popular, which is a lot of areas these days, but that's not the point. If it's not popular in your area and everybody's playing Warhammer 40K, well, your best bet is to play some Warhammer 40K if you want to have people to play games with. Now, that doesn't mean you can't build a community and become a game advocate for the game that you love, because you can. I can do a whole nother video on that. Other people have done it too. Uncle Adam has done it. And he's not my uncle. Anyway, but you could build 2 small forces, go in and try to teach people the game and get the game to pick up, and so on and so forth. You can do that with board games. You can do it with role-playing games. You just kind of have to pre-gen stuff and get it ready to go to teach people the game and introduce them to it. With D&D, for the most part, you're not going to have to do that. Most people in a gaming environment are going to know D&D, if nothing else, by name, and they understand it's a role-playing game. So yes, popularity and accessibility, really good. Entry point, price point for the game, retail for the player's handbook is $49.95. I think you can get it a little cheaper on Amazon, but if you're supporting your local game stores and buying from them, retail price is $50. However, for the $50, you do get all the rules to play the game. It's the full rules, and you have something that some of the other ones don't. In the back of the book, you have a small appendix of monsters. So if you and your group are getting together to play, and you only have one player's handbook because you guys are trying it out, you do have a small gathering of monsters you could use for some low-level games. And that's important, because having the game and not having any monsters to use, not so great. Now, there is another way to go about getting into D&D, and I've talked about this in other videos, and that's their starter boxes, like the Essentials Kit. The Essentials Kit takes you through a few levels of the game. It has an adventure in there that's pretty lengthy. It has a bunch of monsters in there, and it's only $25 to get into it. So if you just want to go that route and try the game out, then either way you go, for $50, you get the full rules to the game, plus some monsters so that you and your friends could go ahead and play. Or for $25, you could get a starter set that gives you most of the rules to the game and a good, I think it's 6 levels of classes you can play through, and monsters and adventure and everything, and dice. So entry points between $25 and $50, depending on how much you want to play. How well supported is D&D? D&D is very well supported. Wizards of the Coast puts a lot of money into their books, and they've put out a lot of books. Not as many as they did during 3rd edition, which a lot of people feared when 5th came out, that it was going to suffer from the book bloat of 3rd edition. It, however, hasn't. If anything, people complain that they put books out too slowly. The biggest complaint that I hear is people complaining that they don't explore the other worlds, like Dark Sun, Dragonlance, so on and so forth. There's been a little exploration of Ravenloft, but not as a campaign setting, more as an adventure. However, any of those old box sets from 2nd edition can be adapted to 5th edition. It just requires some work on your DM's part, but it can be done. As far as their current edition, most of what they do is Forgotten Realms. If you like the Forgotten Realms, then this is fantastic for you. If you're not a huge fan of the Realms, then you're probably doing a lot of making your own stuff up. However, either way, there are tons of supplement books, whether they're tied to the Realms or not, that are out there for you to use. So I would have to say that D&D is very popular, reasonable to get into, and is very well supported. So it's no wonder really that it's so popular. Not just that it was the first, but I mean, I think the name, the brand has something to do with it, but let's move on. The next one that I'm going to talk about is at least started out as a derivative of D&D, and that is Pathfinder. I believe this is the second edition core book. I haven't actually played this edition of the game. I flipped through the book some. This book was the use of it donated for the video by my friend Josh, Mr. Crosby. Thank you very much, because I didn't have a copy of it. But I knew I didn't want to do a video on fantasy RPGs without mentioning Pathfinder. It's a big book, a huge book. It is about 638 pages. It's just massive. Is that right? Is it? Yeah. Wow. It's big. You could kill somebody with this book if you really wanted to. That's probably not the most efficient way to do that. But anyway, this book is going to come in $10 higher than the D&D book. It is $59.99, so $60. Pathfinder also has a starter set, and I think they have one for second edition. I'd have to check. I don't know about that. But their starter set, much like the D&D one, comes with, a way to start playing, a collection of monsters, so on and so forth. So if you're interested in Pathfinder, that might be a really good way to go. The book here is 600 pages and not one monster. So if you just got this, you could not play the game. You wouldn't have anything to fight. And I find that disappointing. For a $60 book that's 600 pages, they couldn't give you a few pages of monsters. I understand a lot of this stuff you can get for free online, blah, blah, blah. But I'm talking about buy the book. If you buy the book, what do you get? You get a ton of stuff, all your character creation and everything. Now, the one thing you do get in this that you don't get in the standard D&D book is you get a complete campaign setting built into it, because Pathfinder has its own campaign setting. In fact, it started out as a campaign setting, so to speak, way back in the day. But it has a very in-depth campaign setting that's very good. The mechanics, I'm speaking on first edition when it comes to the mechanics, because I haven't played second edition. I've only read some of it. The mechanics were very, very, very crunchy. Very meaty, very crunchy in first edition. And it eventually got to the point to where we just called it Mathfinder, and we got tired of playing it. I am excited that they are doing a Savage Worlds Pathfinder crossover this year. So there'll be Savage Worlds books for Pathfinder. That's kind of neat, but that's neither here nor there. It's not out yet, so I'm not putting it in this video. But yeah, just based off of this, popularity, Pathfinder is still very popular to this day. It gained its popularity when D&D switched to 4th edition, and they continued using the open game license to produce 3.75 D&D material. And they put out tons and tons and tons of books and products and maps and stand-ups and adventures and everything, and they really embraced the book bloat. But yeah, their stuff is quality, but there was a lot of it. I don't know that the book bloat's going to be like that so much in the second edition, because I haven't really paid attention to much of the second edition. I can say that, yes, again, I'm disappointed that for $60 there's not a single monster in here for you to fight. So if you and your group got together and you went down and you bought this book and you went home and made characters, you would find very fast you didn't have anything to fight. They may have something online that you can go download, but nothing in the book. And I find that disappointing. But that's just me. You know, your mileage may vary. You might find other reasons that you really do like it. So, popularity and accessibility, absolutely. It is right on the coattails of D&D as far as that goes. Most people that play D&D at least have a familiar, a passing familiarity with Pathfinder because of its close ties to D&D and how interchangeable the maps and minis and stuff are. So yeah, popularity and accessibility, really high score. Price point, $60 for a rule book is not bad. That's about the going rate for any of the big name rule books these days. My only complaint with the $60 is you're paying $60 and you don't even get monsters in it. The Alien RPG, it's a $60 book, but you get monsters in it. In fact, it's a complete game. But they do that because they want you to get the Game Master's Guide, their bestiaries that they're going to put out probably 30 of, whatever. However, it will be well supported. It's already well supported, and it will continue to be well supported, because if there's one thing the guys that make Pathfinder, guys and gals that make Pathfinder, know how to do, it's how to make books and sell books with beautiful art and good content, and they're going to continue doing that. So, popularity, yes. Entry price point, depends on your point of view. And well supported, very much so. However, not compatible with the previous version. So, stuff you're getting for second edition is going to be for second edition. Let's move along. This next one is one that you have heard me talk about quite a bit, and that is the Palladium Fantasy role-playing game. Now, these are softcover books, but they hold up really well over the years, and there's a lot to these too. Like this main one, this is a 336-page book, just the core book. Popularity and accessibility. Not going to be as high as D&D and Pathfinder for the most part. In the right circles, you're going to meet people that have heard of Palladium. You're going to meet people that have definitely heard of Rifts. But not as many people are going to have experience playing Palladium Fantasy as D&D or Pathfinder, just because it's a little more off the beaten path. And compared to the other two, the system can seem clunky. And it's not so much that it's actually clunky, it's dated. And it still works. I've done videos on how things work in it. It's not a hard system, but it can seem that way because of all the flipping back and forth in the book and trying to find stuff, because the organization is not always the best. I'm not browbeating on Palladium's Fantasy because I love it, and I love it for a completely separate reason that has nothing to do with the rules. So popularity, probably, if I'm being generous, maybe half as many people are going to be into this. It's still a fantastic fantasy game, and that brings us to our next point, entry point. The price point for this game, brand new, is $28.99. So it's about $20 cheaper than $20 to $30 cheaper than either one of D&D or Pathfinder's books. It comes with a fantastic built-in setting. The Palladium Fantasy role-playing game is built around its own setting. Has a few of its own races, but everything in the setting, when you read it, it feels like it's been there forever. Like you're reading real history. You're not. You're reading fantasy made-up stuff. But it's good. It's really good. And there's a good bit of it in here. It has some monsters in here to get you started. You can buy just this book for $28. Get started playing, and you don't have to buy anything else. You don't have to buy a monster manual or a GM book or anything. It's a complete game for $30, and the game is not hard. Some people don't care for the system because it uses a lot of different systems for different things. But even if you used the setting out of here with a more modern set of rules that you liked, that could be done too. And it's a fantastic setting with so much depth. In my opinion, it rivals the depth you have for Forgotten Realms 100%. Not in the same way you do with novels, because they don't have as many novels, but I'm talking about just game books with background information on areas. You have enough in here that you can play multiple campaigns and never get any supplement books. But if you want supplement books, much like Rifts, they make them for plenty of other stuff. There are different areas in the games, the different types of monsters, the different gods, dragons, things like that. You have all of that in the game. You have tons and tons of books. I got a bunch of these books over there. I'm not going to sit and go through all of them. But that's just if you want to expand on it. And these are fantastic. You could take any of these. You could run them with the system that's in here. You could run them with your favorite fantasy system. It just gives you a really good setting. In fact, I should probably do a video just on the Palladium fantasy setting. Their books are just great. So how well is it supported? It is supported pretty well. It doesn't have new stuff coming out as much as the other two, but they've been using the same books and the same systems for 30 years, so there's a ton of this stuff that's mostly still in print, and you could order directly from their website. You can get from Amazon, whatever. There's plenty of places to get support for this game. And, you know, just like a lot of the other fantasy games, they'll do like D&D will do an area on Waterdeep. Well, you have the Western Empire here, and this is everything on the Western Empire. You have the one about the giants and everything else. It's very well supported. However, the system itself mechanically may not be for everybody. The last one I'm going to talk about here is one that you've heard me talk about quite a bit on this channel lately, and that is Basic Fantasy. Now, before I start here, let me be clear that this last one that I'm looking at as an overall group of OSRs. OSRs are old school Renaissance, old school revival games where they take the open game license that Wizards put out and they use it to kind of update old versions of D&D, like basic D&D, first edition D&D, with a few more modern rules, and then you play old school D&D with these. The one that is my choice is Basic Fantasy. I absolutely love this one. This is fantastic. There are plenty of other ones out there. You can do your own research onto White Box, White Hack, Black Hack. There's all these different ones that you can try out. It's really neat the way people have been able to go about making games with this. But I'm going to talk about Basic Fantasy, but in this general slot, again, any OSR will do. Look into them. I think you might find something that you like. Popularity and accessibility. OSR is getting way more popular than it was a long time ago, and I'm only learning about it here recently, but I think they had something like 13 Ennies or nominations for Ennie Awards this past year. If I'm right on that, I'm not 100% sure. It seems like somebody told me that. So these books started out as just like, print on Drive-Thru RPG, but now they're actually some of them are doing Kickstarters. They're getting very high quality, high production books out. But what I'm going to talk about is Basic Fantasy. So popularity and accessibility. Well, popularity, you're probably not going to walk into most game stores and find tons of these on the shelf and tons of people playing this one. This is one that you're going to have to expose people to. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, that you won't see people playing it in a game store. I'm saying it's not going to happen at the ratio that you see it happen with D&D. However, this is really just another form of D&D. It's the D&D rules, and it's just been changed around, modded a little bit, but it's still D&D. It has the open game license in here. You've heard me talk about this, you've heard me talk about this in other videos. Entry price point, this blows everything else out of the water. You cannot beat this. It is $5 for a physical copy off of Amazon, or you can go to their website and you can get it for free. They put all their books up for free, plus tons of aid, player GM aid stuff on their site for free. You can download stuff and have I downloaded the GM screen, made my own GM screen for it. But you also get a complete game with this. Even if you buy the physical copy or the PDF that you get for free, you get the complete game. It's the rules, it's character creation, it's advancement, it's the monsters, a ton of monsters in this book, magic items. You get a complete game for $5. And why would you want to go old school? Because old school is fun. And not just for those of us who have been around for a while, but new players as well. I run a game for kids using Basic Fantasy. They love it. I run a game for adults, and it's a mixed group. Some of them played old school like me. Some of them, D&D was their first, or 5th Ed D&D was their first role-playing game. All of them love this. They bought the book immediately. They've been playing it. They have found out that they do not run in guns a-blazing like they did in D&D 5th Ed. That will get them killed in old school D&D. But they have a lot of fun with it. So price point, I don't think you can beat that, period. Free is hard to beat. How well is it supported? Well, Chris Gonnerman, who is the guy who does, he's the kind of the face of the game. He did most of the work for it. I know he has some people working with him, but I don't know exactly who all they are. They put out a lot of really good stuff. You've got more monster manuals. They're field guides or monster manuals. There's a second one, I think, that's getting close to coming to print. You books full of adventures. These are fantastic old school D&D adventures. I mean, they're just really good. I've been running some of these. You can get an entire campaign for like $3 or $4, or you can go download it and just do the digital thing for free. Again, free is hard to beat. But yes, the game has a very lively Facebook group. They have a very active forum on their webpage, and there is constantly people tweaking the game to do different stuff with it. I've done it. I've put my own campaign, my Black Shark campaign, up there where I made some tweaks to the game myself. But yeah, I absolutely love this game, and I think you can't go wrong with it. And if you're just looking to play fantasy, go download the rules and try it out for free. Why pay if you don't have to? And then if you like it, which you will, go pick up a copy of the book. For the price of any of these other games, you could probably buy you and everybody in your group a copy of the rule book for Basic Fantasy. And it's that good. Again, not as popular or as accessible as, say, D&D or Pathfinder, or even Palladium for that matter. But I think the price point, entry point for the game makes up for it, on top of the fact that it's very well supported. They're constantly working on new stuff for it. So there you have it. There are 4 options right there, and I looked at 3 different aspects of each option to see what might be best for you. I hope that you can take that information and either use one of those options or apply it to some other fantasy game that you've decided to look into that you're interested in. If that is the case, please let us know down in the comments, because I would like to hear about it. Until next week, good gaming and good luck.